Discipline versus frequency is something you've spoken about. Willpower with better branding, and discipline was the old answer. And then also the subconscious v conscious. So yeah, for that discipline v frequency side, I'd love a wee bit more detail on how you view that, because discipline's been a key buzzword for like the last 10, 15 years.
And it was when information was the scarce resource, then the obvious answer, if you worked more, then you would have an advantage over other humans. You'd be able to collect more information. And if you compound that over, 1, 5, 10 years, you'll have way more information, experience, and credentials to compete in the market. Unfortunately, now you're not competing against another human. You're competing against an AI system, right? So that idea of working harder necessarily isn't necessarily a relevant advantage anymore. And when you overwork and work harder, you lose clarity, you lose self-trust, you lose emotional regulation. Those are all proven by science. And so it's actually work if you believe that frequency and the skills that come from it are the most abundant or the most premium resources moving forward, then you're working against yourself necessarily. So when we think about discipline, right, what is discipline? It is forcing yourself to do something in order to achieve something that isn't aligned with who you are, right? Somebody that tries to do discipline that is, out of shape and tries to go to the gym, and I'm using a very simple example, but this can be used in leadership, in relationships, in finances, and all other places. They try to go to the gym, it's hard, and it is draining, and it's very unlikely to succeed. About 9% of the time is the current statistic that it works, and the reason is because if you are trying to go to the gym and your subconscious programs that happen automatically say, I should be working instead because I need to be more successful before I get in shape, and you say, I'll never be healthy, I'm not a healthy person, and you're not consciously saying this to yourself. It's not like it's something that an affirmation you say. They're way deep down, deeply ingrained in you that you're not aware of, that when you try to go to the gym, there's friction. Those two things are competing against one another, and that's why you feel the draining energy. And what happens in your body is that when your behavior disagrees with your subconscious programs, what happens is the resources that should be used for energy start getting deployed in other places. Fight or flight resources, your parasympathetic nervous system comes more active, and the resources needed for longevity, health, energy, cognitive ability, emotional regulation don't get the resources that they need, which is why it feels draining. So sure, it sounds noble, right? A lot of the people that preach discipline are people that have been in the military or played sports, and somehow these war and sports analogies have made their way into personal life.
Well, I guess it's always made sense in a way. Obviously, now we're talking about it, there's light bulbs going off, but it has made sense because sometimes, maybe you're right, it's the military background of where it's come from, but you have to do the hard thing to achieve something.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, I guess. It's a tough one when you start really analyzing
right?
what's willpower, what's discipline.
Someone on LinkedIn yesterday said life is about suffering, right? Nope, not for everybody, maybe for you.
Yeah.
And if you believe that, then sure, you're definitely going to suffer along the way.
But that's definitely
not everybody. Not everybody sees it that way.
But that's definitely an extreme one. But I guess it's a tough one, right? Because you're right, there's all these different, like how people grew up, like the societal messaging or like whatever was going on in their conditioning, that's it. But for people who maybe don't have, I'm going to use the words wrong now that we've given them such strong definitions, but the willpower, who maybe have, like as a child, like put on weight and stuff, who didn't have the practices to go and take care of themselves and make healthy decisions, to drag themselves to the gym, and I use the word drag to maybe give it that negative connotation, to do that, what's the alternative? Frequency. Yeah.
So when we're doing this, right, sometimes it's misinterpreted and being like action doesn't matter, right? That's not what I'm saying. what I'm saying is that we shift our thinking, our subconscious beliefs first. And when we shift our subconscious beliefs, the internal friction goes away, which makes the action natural and easy. And then when we take the action, it gives a feedback loop to our brain that says, oh, this is who I am. And you create a belief action feedback loop that strengthens the neural pathways and makes it way easier to sustain, right? And so it's not that action isn't important. It's just a very low leverage place to start. Okay. And when we try to start with action and it only succeeds 9% of the time and it feels hard and draining, that sends a feedback loop to our brain that says, I'm not going to be able to do this. It's right. This isn't who I am. I'm not going to be able to get in shape. And it actually works against you most of the time, and it gets the pathway stronger that you can't do it, right? So the process is to identify what are the things that I believe about myself in the world that are creating this friction, right? If I'm trying to go and make a speech, right? This has been me before, right? I'm going to make a speech to 1,000 people, right? I've done a podcast a million times, but for some reason when I'm in person, I feel anxious, right? And it won't go away. And so to look and say, what are the things that I believe about myself in the world that are causing this anxiety? Because it's not the speech.